Welcome to the Rachel Varga podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Varga, double board certified aesthetic nurse specialist since 2011 with over 20,000 rejuvenation procedures performed. I'm an international clinical trainer for other physicians and nurses as well, celebrity skin expert, having been featured on some of the world's top proactive aging podcasts, and much, much more. Learn more at rachelvarga.ca and enjoy today's episode. Welcome, everyone, to today's live recording here on the Rachel Varga podcast. I have a very exciting episode in store for each and every one of you. In today's show, we are going to discuss EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, and the known impacts on the skin and even our eyes. If you are a dry eye sufferer, which impacts, last time I checked, about 50% of the population, this could be some information for you. If you have diffuse redness and skin irritation, this could be information that can help you, because what we know, non-ionizing radiation, EMFs, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that stuff does create oxidative stress on the skin and our eyes. This is actually pretty mainstream published knowledge, even on PubMed. You can search that. But of course, what we talk about here isn't medical advice. This is educational information only. If you think you have a medical condition, you must seek the guidance of a licensed physician. We are going to expand to talk about not only the eyes and the skin, but we're also going to be talking about ways that EMFs can impact our energy and other health impacts that it has been known to impair, including reproduction, our immune health, and much, much more. If you're new to the show here, I've done quite a few audio-only deep dives on the audio-only version of the Rachel Varga podcast on iTunes and Spotify, where I have gone pretty deep into this stuff. So I'm really excited to have our blank here from ShieldYourBody.com. They have some amazing EMF mitigation products. Buyer beware with this stuff these days. There's a lot of things out there that actually aren't they don't work, or they don't do what they think they work. They do. So if you see me listening to things and I have headsets in, these are actually our blanks products and adapters on my headsets and all these things. So use promo code to save on your next order at ShieldYourBody.com. The link is in this episode. So let me introduce you to our blank. He is an entrepreneur, technologist, and author. He is the CEO of Shield Your Body, which creates products that make it easy and affordable for people to reduce their exposure to wireless radiation from devices like cell phones and laptops. And along with his father, Dr. Martin Blank, he co-authored Overpowered, widely regarded as one of the best books written on the science of the health effects of EMF radiation. He is also the host of the Healthier Tech podcast, which just had me on the show this week. So be sure to check out our episode on the Healthier Tech podcast, where I really went into the weeds on skin and EMFs and what I've noticed and observed, and what I'm going to be including in my upcoming research paper. Our blank follows a 20-year career in software development for blue chip firms, including Apple, NBC, Disney, Microsoft, the NFL, IKEA, and Mattel. R also co-founded Wildform, where he co-created the first video encoder for Flash, sold to Google. He has served on the affiliate faculty at the University of California, Santa Cruz in the Digital Arts and New Media program, and previously on the faculty of the University of Southern California, Burbage School of Engineering. Additionally, R has authored numerous articles, videos, courses, and books in technology and software development. R has an MBA in entrepreneurship from UCLA Anderson School of Management and an underlying degree from Columbia University. So we definitely have some interesting backgrounds here that you're able to pull from big tech and engineering and health and wellness. Very exciting to have you here on the show, R Blank from Shield Your Body. How are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you doing, Rachel?
Good. It's great to have you here. I can see the greenery behind you and you're recording. So open that window up. You're going to be getting all those lovely, fabulous negative ions. It's great. So I just read your bio, but I would love for you to share with us your story. What got you so passionate about helping people within their living lifestyle daily practices to help them use technology in a safer way. What is your story?
So it was about 10 years ago, and my father, whom you mentioned, Dr. Martin Blank, was one of the world's leading researchers into EMF and health effects. And he had a contract to write a book, and he was a very good writer, but this was his first book aimed at just regular people, right? Not other scientists, not academics, not even activists, just regular people, to help educate them on what he had learned in his decades of researching and advocacy. And so he asked me for some help to make the subject matter more approachable. And so I did. I hopped in and spent 6 months working with him to write what became known as Overpowered. And it was in the course of writing that book that a couple of key factors really just hit home for me. One being that the science on these questions of the bioactivity, to just pick one term, the bioactivity of exposure to EMF radiation, the science is really compelling. It's really strong. But on the other hand, the sources of these exposures in our lives, they are the things that literally define modern life. In other words, there is no going back and to a world without EMF exposure. That's just not possible. And so I realized there had to be safer ways for people to use and engage with these various sources of EMF radiation exposure in their lives. So whereas someone like my father and many of his colleagues are focused on providing the intellectual foundation for others to advocate that safety regulations must be reconsidered and strengthened, I take not that I disagree with it, but I take a different approach, which is there's a lot of stuff you and I can do with the tech in our lives right now, while the big wigs and the real smarty pants go and advocate for actual safety standards to exist to make things safer for us.
Because there really aren't any safety standards, simply put. Isn't that true?
Yeah, well,
Only
so
thermal that's tested.
yeah, right. That's exact. So, I mean, so there's the answer to your question, which I think you already know, is the thermal effect, which is the basis for the regulations that do exist. And I'm happy to talk more about that. But also, there are a whole bunch of exposures that really are literally not regulated at all. And so that would include, for instance, if you're a consumer in the United States, there's no regulations governing how much EMF you could be exposed to from the power line in front of your house. Literally none. If you're a worker at the power plant, there are some occupational exposure limits. But if you're just a consumer at home, there's none. As far as I can tell, there are no regulations governing what your cumulative or exposure to EMF radiation can be driving a car, right? Which is increasingly relevant as we have not only hybrid and electric cars on the road, but now more and more wireless technology coming into the cabin and helping to actually navigate the vehicle through roads, right? So there's whole classes of exposures that are entirely unregulated. Now there are others, cell phones being a big primary example of that, where the regulations that do exist, and there's many flaws with them, but as a starting point, like you said, they're all about the thermal effect. And so what the thermal effect says, and people, even if they don't know this, they know this, right? Because microwave ovens use EMF to cook. That's what microwave means. It's the microwave form of EMF radiation. And so you know that you can have enough EMF radiation that it actually cooks or heats your tissue. And that is harmful immediately, right? That's not like we're talking like you'll get cancer in 10 years. That's actually causing immediate harm. And so the regulations that do exist, like cell phone radiation emission regulations, those are all based on preventing the thermal effect. That is, your phone can't emit so much radiation that it actually heats your tissue. Now, we all have experienced phones get warm enough to actually heat our tissue, but let's leave that aside, right? So those are the immediate effects of too much EMF radiation. If you have too much radiation exposure, you can heat the tissue, causing immediate physical damage to the cells and to your bodies. And that's what the regulations are designed to protect against. Now, when people like me come on shows like this and we talk about EMF and the problems with EMF, in general, we're talking about the problems that take months, years, or even decades to form. These are not immediate health effects, and the regulations don't even pretend to want to protect you against those.
Yeah, it's really interesting why that is. So, with your story, you were talking about then unpacking the regulation side of things. So, after you started to learn about that in your journey, where did you go from there? How did you think, okay, should I be educating people on this? Is this something we should start to think about in the health space?
Yeah, well, so I mean, educating people has been key to SYB's mission from day one. I mean, in a way, the mission began by my contributions to Overpowered, and that was entirely an educational effort. But yes, I mean, that's one of the things that why I thought, why should I get into this area? And because I felt like I was actually quite effective at communicating and explaining these issues in ways that maybe many other people who are much smarter than I am, but they just don't have that same ability to kind of summarize it in ways that just consumers can understand and can take action on and can then verbalize and communicate to others. And so uh, that is really one of the main reasons that I started SYB. Another being, as you said earlier, right? If you go out, and this was even worse 10 years ago, but it's still true. If you go out and just search for EMF protection, you're going to find a lot of things that aren't really what they're claiming to be, in part because this is an entirely unregulated sector. I mean, it shouldn't be surprising, right? Because EMF emissions themselves are largely unregulated. So why would EMF protection be more regulated? But I felt education was important just so people started understanding the issues around EMF, but also so they wouldn't get suckered into spending money on things that protect them when they're not being protected. And so that's how it all kind of came together to form the SYB that you see today when you go to shieldyourbody.com, where yes, we have a store and we have a couple dozen products, but we have hundreds of articles, videos, ebooks, webinar archives, all on all these different areas. And the more you learn about EMF, like the basics are very easy to get across. But once you get past the basics, you start realizing there's all of this nuanced knowledge. And, I'm learning stuff still every day, every week, just on my interaction with experts who figured out different forms of the way, dirty electricity works, or what's generating it, or how it flows, or how, does grounding help you or does it hurt you? The answer, by the way, is both. A lot of these things are, on the one hand, on the other hand. That is the mission that I see SYB trying to fulfill every day.
Wonderful. Well, before having you on, in true research unbiased fashion, I actually bought a number of your products, including the air tube headsets. I have this adapter on my stereo headphone headset so I can be playing my Gibson Les Paul, doing some Mark Knopfler stuff, and I'm not getting irradiation into my ears because we're going to see things like acoustic neuromas popping up. And don't even get me started on AirPods. There's like this status thing with using all of these Bluetooth devices and AirPods because they're so expensive. It's like, I can afford this and I'm going to show it off that I can afford this. But the irony is that it's actually making them more dumb, I'm sorry to say this, and more sick. And the reason I use that specific word is because of cognitive impairment that is simply going to happen, because when you're using tech that is giving off non-ionizing radiation, it is messing with your blood, and it is literally messing with oxygenation to your brain. And I'll see videos of people sharing their skin issues on social media, and they have AirPods in and they have all these signs of skin inflammation on their face. It's like, maybe these high emitters of non-ionizing radiation might have something to do with the effects that they're actually having on their skin. And then I have one girlfriend, she's like, oh, I'll put this like sticker on my AirPods and then it won't emit radiation. So there's a lot of gimmicks with things that are, you know, pressed or like in a sticker type of fashion that you can put on devices. I'd love to hear your information on that. I understand we need to do more shrouding or actually eliminating the source. We're talking like Faraday cage style. So, what are a few, in your honest opinion, because you've researched this stuff, you create products to do this, you've tested them. What are a few AM and PM daily routine strategies and also tech that we can use that we can employ to start having a healthier relationship with technology?
So I appreciate the question. By and large, I find that the way to approach a healthier relationship with technology is to find a way to have less of a relationship with technology. And you know, I have to be careful when I'm saying that because I mean, my background was in tech. I'm still a big tech fan. I mean, not the same way I used to be, but I definitely appreciate, I mean, the fact that I'm able to sit here and talk to you right now is because of all this tech that I have here, that you have there, and that's connecting the two of us at the same time. Tech adds a tremendous amount of value, but as with anything, the more of it you have, the less you even realize it's there and the less you can actually appreciate it. And it's the same thing with, you know, a really nice dessert. Like if once a month you go out to a nice restaurant and they have a really nice dessert, I'm not saying it's healthy for you to have that dessert. I'm saying you're going to appreciate it. Versus if you have it every single day, you're just not going to appreciate it the same way. And there's any number of different examples that you could come up with that illustrate that same point. And so with technology, you know, it's not about getting rid of technology, but it is about kind of focusing in on those use cases. Let's put this into practice. I mean, let's skip the obvious ones, right? Let's skip turning your Wi-Fi off at night. Let's skip not sleeping with your phone. So, you know, first thing in the morning, I used to get on my phone and scroll the news. I felt pretty good about that because I thought, oh, I'm scrolling the news, I'm staying informed, and I'm not addicted to social media. This is so much better than me waking up and scrolling social media. But within the past year, I've made the conscious decision not to scroll the news within the first 2 hours of being awake in the day. And at first, I was like, what am I going to do with my time? Right. Cause it's not like it's hard, but there's like this emotional wall that you hit where you just have to come to terms with a term that's sometimes used as micro boredom, where it's okay to be bored for 6 seconds or 7 seconds. You just power through it and then you'll actually, but it actually had a very beneficial impact on my mental state, on my psychological, on my mood in the mornings, in ways I didn't appreciate when checking the news was, and it's not only scrolling, it's actually also listening. You know, I'd load up while I'm making breakfast, I would load up the NPR app and listen to the news. And I just cut all that out. And I still read the news and listen to it, but it's only within a smaller window within the day. I'm not always doing it. And it has a really big impact. Another thing, we already mentioned not sleeping with your phone, but not bringing it to bed and scrolling through it at night. You know, this is an area where I have a different perspective than many of my colleagues, because the people who really advocate eliminating tech and eliminating blue light, they would not approve of this. But I read my Kindle in bed in airplane mode, but I really like reading as part of my going to sleep ritual. And I'm a big fan of the Kindle over actual books. So I will make that exception. That is a conscious decision that I have made, but not using the phone at that time is, I think, very, very important. A lot of what we're talking about here is related to the phone, because in terms of tech's damaging impact on us as individuals and us as a society, a huge, and sometimes it's easy to miss the forest for the trees, right? Because there is so much tech in the world. There's so much tech in our lives. But the phone is such a central part of our lives that it is our interactions with the phone that can be such a significant cause of the disruptions to our physical, physiological, and emotional health. So it's not like, very few people feel like they have a very unhealthy relationship with their laptop. But a lot of people realize that they do with their phone. So it's a lot. Just if you're just going to pick one device to start with, it is the phone, and find the things that you that bring value to you out of the phone, and start cutting out all the others, and see what you feel like. Right, just run it as a personal experiment, because the phone is having such a significant impact on you. And a lot of the time I'm talking about EMF exposure, and that is true. But we're also, science is also now revealing many other negative health impacts of the phone. So an example, before, I know I'm going off here on a rant, so I'll cut off in a sec. The example you had just before, right, with cognitive inhibition, cognitive problems resulting from the phone, that is one where I believe it is virtually impossible in the science to tease out which impacts are from the EMF versus which impacts are from our actual experiences on the phones, because we're getting both at the same time, right? When we're using our phone in an unhealthy way, such that it is negatively impacting our cognition or our learning ability or our memory, all of which is now being borne out by the science, we don't know for sure how much of that is from the EMF emissions from the phone, and how much of it is what Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or the dopamine triggers that are being pulled in by the notification systems, which aspects are being caused by those. And so, it's not important to me, honestly, which impacts are the EMF versus which impacts are the addictive design of these experiences. What's important is they're both coming from that same device. That device adds a lot of value to our lives. So let's focus on finding where it adds value, and then start finding ways to reduce the other parts of life that we experience through it.
And from a human experience relationship standpoint, we're using tech to find partners these days. However, when you are in an experience, you're having a conversation with someone, I don't have my phone here. It's in a Faraday cage. I'm in airplane mode, like way over there. I can't even reach it. But the thing I'm asking people is about beauty and attraction lately. So in conversations with individuals, I ask them, what are the things, because I study radiance and beauty and skin health, how we can be these amazing, beautiful, high vibrating beings. What is the most unattractive thing that people are doing these days? So ladies and gentlemen are telling me when they're having a conversation with someone and they're constantly like checking their phone, it's like the most unattractive thing that we can do in a relationship. It might help you get a relationship, but then it will impair the relationship. So this interesting dichotomy with tech. When you interviewed me not too long ago, I had actually disabled my Instagram account all the way from March until August. And I did go back on it because I went to this big biohacking event, and it does, like you said, make things easier for connecting with people on the fly and booking things with one another really quickly in an efficient way. But I will be the first to tell you the psychological benefits of not having these platforms on your phone and not checking them incessantly, and having that quiet, slow time where you can actually be in your thoughts, integrate things that you've experienced throughout the day, be more efficient, feel more emotionally stable, and also, most importantly for me, is feeling less interfered with. Buy this, think that, do this, go there, right? Look this way. And it was interesting taking that step away for quite a long period of time. I'll do this with supplements sometimes too, see what happens. Usually the supplements are just always good for me. But this experiment, this was a very clear read to me, to not even have it on your phone, not even have the app there. Maybe re-download it when you need to, if you're posting it frequently. And please, heavens, please do not have these apps on your kids' iPads. because there's so much that's going on behind the scenes. You're involved in big tech, you know what's happening.
Well,
And
so yeah, that brings to another practice, because you were asking about strategies.
yes,
A good one, if even if because people like you and me, we keep our devices in airplane mode a lot more than average consumers. But even if you're not willing to do that, um, my phone almost never comes out of do not disturb mode. So
me too.
I don't get interrupted by those notifications are designed with all the major apps design the notifications in ways to hijack your neural mechanisms to basically, I mean, not basically, to literally foster addictive behaviors with these platforms, with these experiences, and they do it in ways that are very disruptive to, like, so you think you're being rewarded, but actually your entire quality of life is being negatively impacted. And that may sound like an extreme framing of it, but it's literally what is happening. And you're seeing the manifestations or the ramifications of that now. So for instance, there was a study, and I forget the citation, so I apologize, but there was a study that sleeping with your phone, even if it's fully off, negatively impacts your sleep quality, because your brain is so wired to expect these notifications coming off that device, which release dopamine, which give you a reward, a sensation of reward, just like gambling. But so even if your phone is entirely off, if it is within sight of you, it will harm your sleep. And there was another study like that, indicating similar outcomes in terms of test taking. So even if the phone it's in the classroom, but it's totally off, you will do worse on average on the test than when the phone is not in the classroom. And so these are all evidence of the impacts that what we permit our devices to do to us has on our lives, even if we're not actively aware of it.
Yeah, but I think it goes so much deeper than just like the physical health impacts, the psychological impacts. I mean, you can expect that this stuff has been studied for a long time and has been able to be manipulated for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And now, over the last little while, we've really seen that play out with manipulation, with divisiveness. Like this stuff goes really deep. And then when you take a step back from that, you kind of when you interact with people that are in this world in this way, it creates such a contrast. Like, say for example, I was at a birthday celebratory dinner not too long ago, and I just like I can't stand hearing like the phone calls and the dings and this and that, and people talking about this, that, the other thing on the other side of the planet. It's like, how about we just get back to being a human, not a cyborg with this attachment to us, and be more grounded, centered, balanced, and aligned. Your life will be better. Believe me. When I did that little experiment on myself, it definitely made a huge, huge impact from a health perspective, but also from a psychological perspective. I felt more sovereign. I felt less manipulatable, even, and just kind of staying in my own lane and felt more psychologically supported and healthier. So, what
Right.
is some of the scientifically established health effects of EMF and 5G? And I've gone into deep dives on what it does to the blood and all that. So the
Mm-hmm.
audience is warm. So let's get into the
Oh,
nitty
sure. Well,
gritty
so
of this.
on this, the key point that I like to make, and it's one of which I know you are already aware, but we can use it as a starting point for the discussion, is that uh, we find, or the science, the story the science tells is that these negative health effects are found in virtually every biological system in which they are measured, right? So you were talking about the blood, you were talking about the skin, you've mentioned the eyes. We see it in tumors, obviously, but most people think it's brain tumors, which it is. But we also see it in thyroid cancer, in colorectal cancer, in prostate cancer. So, and that's all over the body, obviously, but we see it in disruption of the endocrine system, which most of the attention is paid to melatonin production, or rather melatonin suppression, um, because that then has knock-on effects of sleep disruption. And when you have disrupted sleep, and disrupted circadian rhythms, that has knock-on effects in your health, because you're not recovering and rejuvenating every night the way that you should be. We see it obviously, in infertility, particularly in the testes, but you also see it in rates of miscarriage and birth defects. So we and these are just right. I mean, I could keep going on and on. Right? There's the leakage of the blood-brain barrier. There's the Frey auditory microwave effect, right, where you manifests as tinnitus. I'm sorry, in humans, we have begun to notice increased rates of what is often referred to as EHS, or electrohypersensitivity syndrome, electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome, which is effectively, we've talked about on the Healthier Tech podcast, which is effectively for lack of a better term, an allergy to exposure of levels of EMF radiation that other people are unaffected by. There's growing science on anxiety and depression resulting from EMF exposure. Though this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it can be difficult to separate out the results of EMF exposure versus the results of what we're spending our time on the devices doing, and the emotional experience of interacting with our technology. But it's not just in humans, right? So we see it in disruption of navigation of any species that relies on the Earth's magnetic field to get around. So that includes whales, it includes birds, it includes several types of insects. We see it in all sorts of plants, particularly in their rates of growth. So the presence of certain types of towers, radar, FM towers, cell towers will inhibit the growth of trees and plants, or possibly kill them altogether. So my point being is, we see it when I say we see it in every biological system in which it's measured, I mean every biological system in which it's measured, not just in humans. Exposure to levels of EMF radiation that fall well within the safety limits of what is permitted yield serious negative health outcomes for everything that is alive. And that is not, I know it can sound like an overstatement, but it is not an overstatement. And, because a lot of people are, when we talk about toxins, we think about, a specific outcome associated, like with smoking, which maybe isn't the same thing as an environmental toxin, but let's go with smoking. We think about
that EMFs is the smoking of our generation. I've been saying that for quite a while now.
So yeah, with smoking, you think, okay, that can cause lung cancer, can cause emphysema. Maybe there's a couple other things it causes, but that's basically it. It's not like smoking has the ability to cause brain tumors or infertility, or leakage of the blood-brain barrier, which can lead to increased susceptibility to viruses in the brain, to all increased miscarriage risk, and so, well, that one actually it can, but the point being, it's hard for us to think of a toxin as having such a wide range of negative health outcomes. But EMF gets everywhere, right? When you're smoking, it really gets focused in the throat and the lungs. When you're drinking water that has increased rates of microplastics in it, right? That tends to go through just the digestive system and come out right. But EMF literally gets everywhere. The entire body is permeable. Most surfaces on the planet are permeable. And so it actually, every single part of your body, once you're exposed to this stuff, it's every single part of your body gets exposed to this stuff. And everyone's physiologies are unique. Everyone's health is unique. And so and our exposures are all very unique, even if we're all getting exposed to, the amount of radiation we're getting from source X and how much we're getting from source Y and how, source Z, and, what parts of our bodies are getting exposed, right? All of that is different, in addition to all of our unique physiologies. And so we have a wide range in how these health effects manifest. But it is from that perspective, it is a very serious situation. Now, I want to be clear that and I think this was obvious from what I was saying earlier, I recognize that it's not possible to go back to the life in 1850s. which is when you'd have to basically go back to in order to have a world without human-made EMF exposure. I also think it's not desirable to go back to life in the 1850s. The same technology that is exposing us to these forces that I'm talking about here is the same technology that not only is allowing you and me to talk right now, but that has extended human lifespan to levels never before seen, has created tremendous economic opportunity, right? So this is not to say let's get rid of tech. This is really bad. Let's get rid of tech. This is to say this is really bad, and we have to be much more cognizant of how we're using this technology. And because once enough people have that level of awareness, that's when enough people care that regulations actually start to change, right? Because it's not until more people understand this language and understand the issues at stake that enough of those people exist that governments will be able to overcome the inertia created just by the way governments and bureaucracies operate and the corporate interests that are opposed to any changes on the regulatory side.
Yeah, I find this all very fascinating. And when we're talking about different places in the world, different regulations. So I was in West Palm Beach and I was listening to one of my favorite researchers, Dr. Beverly Rubik. She's one of the pioneers that's looking at this stuff. And she's someone who I've followed for many, many years. You know that 5 minutes on your cell phone is impacting you because you can literally take a drop of your blood, put it on a slide, look at it under the microscope, and you can actually see through live blood analysis that your red blood cells are becoming sticky and they're forming chains called rouleau. You're getting clotting factors, so you're not getting good blood flow. Like, this isn't woo. This isn't like, okay, people that are talking about this are tinfoil hatters. No, definitely not.
Oh,
We are
yeah.
just literally looking at the research and these live blood analysis slides and seeing all these overlaps with different clients that are having different conditions. And then we're sharing this data across the globe. Different things will proliferate in the body when it's in an environment of high EMFs and 5G, which is also really interesting. But one of the things that I'm really keen on continuing to study and unpack is the space between. So in between our cells, our molecules, or atoms, most of what makes us up is space. So it's energy. And if we're in fields that are augmenting and messing with and impairing our body's natural state of energy flow and transfers, then of course you're going to have things messing up. So when I was in Palm Beach, I decided to do this little test. Okay, how many, antennas emitting 5G and Wi-Fi are in West Palm Beach versus Beverly Hills? Because there was the biohacking conference I wanted to go to, right? Dave Asprey's. Looked like a lot of fun. But then I do the check on Beverly Hills, and they have 3 times the amount of 5G and EMF towers than West Palm Beach. And these are in different states, right? We're talking California versus Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting to see that difference. That in these different metropolitan areas, there was such a higher, 3 times more concentration of this technology. So it's almost coming down to different places where the people are saying to who's running the show, here are the health impacts. If you care, maybe do something about it. So we are seeing different places in the world actually making shifts. We see this a little bit more in certain European cities with how they lay their power lines with houses and stuff like that, which is good, but you just have to be aware of it. I just wanted to jump in here with strategies. So the way I mitigate EMFs in my life is airplane mode, do not disturb. It's in a Faraday cage. I'll check my phone when I want to check it. Don't be offended if I don't give you my cell phone number and I defer you to my email. I never give out my cell phone number because I'm not, tied to my phone all the time or driving with Bluetooth distracting me and all this stuff. Like, forget it. That's like my time. I'm going to get creative. You're going to thank me with the content I make here on the show because I live this way. I sleep in silver sheets. I'm actually wearing EMF pants right now. I look like I'm ready to go on the set of Star Trek, but I'm balancing it out with a little cashmere on top. Got to keep it balanced, right? But I wear EMF protective clothing. I don't use headsets without some type of adapter. So you make some pretty cool tools and tech. So if you were to basically come up with a list of your favorite EMF mitigation essential tools, I've mentioned a couple of mine. There are more, as you can imagine. But what are yours that you can literally not go through your day without? And again, this isn't going to be applicable or necessary for everyone, but if you do get the sense that you are hypersensitive to this stuff, these are good strategies that might help you.
Sure. So, and I don't have all of them at my side here, but I'll start with one that I do think is applicable to a lot of people, right? Because when people ask me, because I spend a lot of time explaining to people what the free changes they can make are, because that is a huge step, right? So, right, we live in this world with so much EMF around us, and especially if you live in a city and you look out your window and you see, 10 towers, and you turn on Wi-Fi and you see 30 networks, and you're like, what's the point, right? Why should I? Because I can't cut. And so it's to those people that I say, let's start with something simple, which is not carrying your phone in your pocket or your bra, or anywhere up. Men also, I see them wear it in the breast pocket of their suits, right? Anywhere right up against your body. Because again, even if you see all of the wireless infrastructure that I was just talking about, when you look out into the world, that phone in your pocket is exposing you to more radiation than that tower a mile away, even though the tower is more powerful. And that's because of how far away it is, right? The power of EMF radiation diminishes exponentially with distance. And so when the phone is right up against your body, you are getting a maximum possible dose of the radiation. And I have a phone here somewhere. Sorry, I use it as a visual aid. A maximum possible dose of what this thing has to offer. And keeping in mind, right? So first off, the phone itself has to communicate back and forth to a cell tower. That may have to be miles, right? So this is powerful enough to communicate miles. That's a huge signal, but it's not just that, right? Because it also has a Wi-Fi card in it. That's how it gets Wi-Fi. It has a Bluetooth card in it. It has NFC in it, which is how Apple Pay and Google Pay and other wireless payment systems, that's how they work. So a phone isn't just one wireless connection.
Coming to a palm near you in the UK,
Yeah.
by the way. I just met somebody and their wife's a surgeon. They got a little chip in their hand so they can
Yeah, I've seen.
stay on the go.
I would do that. But for other, so so it's not just one form of EMF in the phone, right? It's actually a source of generally 4 or 5 or 6, depending on what kind of phone you have. And so that's why it's so important not to carry your phone in your pocket or your bra, or anywhere up against your body. And in fact, if you read the manual for several of these phone models, they tell you that, right? So in the iPhone manual, in the small print, it will tell you that. So that's my number one piece of advice for people, because if you carry your phone in your pocket, and it's not in airplane mode, that is probably one of your biggest, if not the biggest, sources of your personal exposure. So that to me is a huge piece of advice that everyone should be doing.
And
then,
the Apple Watches and all your tracking devices that are biohacking to support your health, but are actually making you sick. I stopped wearing biohacking trackers a while ago.
Excellent. But so, yeah, I mean, that's to me that because people have begun to rely on their phones, not just begun, they've come to rely on their phones for so much more than an Apple Watch. I mean, I also advocate against any wearable tech. But phones are such an important part of people's lives and work. And so it's one thing for someone like me to come along and say, don't carry your phone in your pocket or put it in airplane mode if you do. It's another for other people to, I need it for my job. Where am I going to carry it? I only have me. And so that's why I make several products designed to make it safer to carry your phone. So the one which has been my best seller now, it's a nice, simple product. It's been my best seller since I launched it in 2015. And it's the Syb Phone Pouch. And it's a pouch for your phone, and it has a belt hoop, so you can put it on your belt or just put it in your pocket. The rear of the pouch has radiation shielding, and the front doesn't, right? So that's what allows your phone to still communicate, to send and receive calls or messages or alerts, whatever you need, but it deflects the radiation away from your body to reduce your exposure in the process of carrying it. And this is actually, this is not yet launched.
Like a holster for your cell phone. Sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we've upgraded so actually, well, before that, we have a sling bag, which I left in the other room. I apologize. I don't have it to show you. But it's same technology as the pouch, except it's a sling bag. So it's a nice, stylish piece of kit. But it can hold your phone, but it could also hold your iPad or your Kindle or your Nintendo Switch or whatever, plus your wallet and your pens and stuff. So it's a very convenient way to carry your phone more safely. Again, like with the phone pouch, the sling bag, the back, the part that touches you has radiation shielding and the front does not. So my products are designed not to interfere with the performance of your devices. So the product that we're releasing in October, so very soon, but which I talked to you about before the show, but I haven't talked about publicly anywhere yet until right now. It's in between the pouch and the sling bag. So this is the Pouch Deluxe. So you can see by size. Can these get in the image? For size comparison, this is the difference. And this is designed, again, to carry just more than just your phone. It'll carry any sized phone, right? Because increasingly, since I launched the pouch, phones have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And so, maybe this isn't big enough for your phone, but also maybe you want to carry your wallet in there or some pens or some bubble gum or whatever. Yeah, right. Makeup.
What about my lip gloss and like my lip
Yeah,
sunscreen and my
that will fit in
sunscreen?
here. That will fit in, and it will protect you from them.
Oh my goodness.
And then, whereas the pouch just has the belt hoop, the Pouch Deluxe has the belt hoop, but it also has a carabiner and a strap. Which obviously you'd only want to use one of these at a time. But the point is, it comes with all these different options to carry in any way that so around your shoulder, or just pluck it to a belt hoop, or whatever you want. And finally, it has the snap cover because the phone pouch is just an open top. So this is the Pouch Deluxe. We are launching it in October at shieldyourbody.com. And that is, so I have, as you've seen on the website, I forget now exactly, almost 30 products. But it is the ones that make it safer to carry your phone that I believe are most applicable to most people, because most people aren't willing to put their phone into airplane mode all day while they carry it around. And so the only option to do that safer is to use a product like my phone pouch or my Pouch Deluxe or my sling bag. And I have more coming in 2023.
That's really interesting. So it's got one side of shielding, one side so it can still send and receive signal. Because it's funny, right? I keep mine in a Faraday pouch, and sometimes I can just tell that poor little phone is trying its hardest to send signals, and it actually gets warm because it's
right. That's how it's designed to work, right? A phone, if it experiences interference, will boost the power of its output to compensate, to try to penetrate whatever the interference, overcome the interference. And so that's why if you're putting your phone in a Faraday pouch, that means you don't need it to be on, right? Because you're expecting it to be silenced. So at that point, I say just use airplane mode and save your phone the battery life. Because if you put a phone on in a Faraday pouch and the pouch is actually working, you can overheat the phone, you will rapidly drain the battery, and you will cut into the battery's lifespan. So airplane mode is what I have. And so when it comes to products like my apparel, and this is the SYB neck gaiter, right? Any of my apparel
is it lady friendly?
Yes.
Oh, fabulous! Finally.
Yes. I mean it's 90% silver, 10% spandex. It's a nice neutral tone. And yes, it is. I mean, most of my customers are actually female. I know your views on EMF apparel. I don't disagree with them. But most of my customers are actually female. But anyway, I was just going to say, when it comes to apparel, you want the whole thing to cover, right? You want the whole thing to shield, because when it comes to apparel, you're trying to protect your body, and it only protects the parts that it's covering, right? But when it comes to electronics accessories, I don't have the same belief, right? I believe that it should provide shielding between the device and your body, but leave the rest of it uncovered, because of what we were just talking about, because of the way, for instance, phones are designed to operate, where if they're fully shielded, it introduces all these other issues into the device.
So the Faraday cage is more spy tech, right?
Yeah. Yeah, those are increasing. I guess there's like an epidemic of car thefts because people are hijacking key fob codes and stuff. So, wireless car keys.
Oh, can we just talk about that for a second? Because I actually take my key, right? It's got like all this electronics in it. The new cars are just that's just a mess. I'm on the wait list for a Cybertruck because, trying to be economically and ecologically friendly here. But I'm gonna take one for a test drive, and I'm gonna have my EMF reader with me, and I'm probably gonna see that you're better off just sticking with older technologies, older vehicles. So
From an
sticking with
EMF
analog.
perspective, you certainly
Absolutely.
are. Yeah.
But the key fobs also emit signal. So what I'll do is I'll actually put my key in my Faraday cage too.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I've tested it. I've actually had it in the Faraday cage, and I'll press the buttons and my car won't unlock. But with the new piece of technology, they are emitting all the time. So just like little things like that, I think can make a big difference. But what a world we live in these days, R blank, where we legitimately, I'm over here and with my space pants on. I'm going to be doing some grounding after this because me on my laptop here, I might as well be sitting in front of my router.
Oh,
This
wow.
is
Yeah.
this is how much my laptop is kicking off. So is there any way, this is like a personal question here. I know we're way over for time, so we'll wrap up after this. But how do I mitigate the amount of signal that my laptop emits while I'm live streaming here and doing my client sessions?
Yeah. So that one's tough, right? Because the way EMF shielding works is, in order for it to work, it has to form a shield in between you and the source. And with computers, that get, or it just gets harder, right? So okay, because if you put up a shield, you can't reach through it to. So the way I would advocate you deal with this, they do make certain clear shielding materials, which I can email you after this if you're interested. And what you'd want to do is get like a self-standing, like plexiglass kind of thing, and put it up in front of your computer so that the camera can see through it. And but then you put this clear shielding on it, and so it becomes shielded plexiglass. Then, in order to make sure you can still control your computer while it's on, you put in a wired keyboard and wired mouse to get around the shielded plexiglass. And so that is a way that you could. Now, that is something that like you would do. It's not something that like a lot of
It is
consumers
something
would
I would
do.
do.
Yeah, no, and it's totally practical. It's totally practical. The problem is there's not a whole lot of clear shielding materials, but they do exist. So there are some. They generally are mountable. Like, so you basically you peel a layer and it can stick. And so yes, that's how I would advocate addressing. But as a starting point, I'm sure you've already done this. So I'm just saying it for the record and for your audience members who didn't know. But even if you're using Wi-Fi, turn off the Bluetooth that's on your computer.
Of
Because
course
that's
I do
just
that.
additive. Yeah, no, I knew you
Of
knew
course.
that. And of course, if you can, get rid of the Wi-Fi itself. But a lot of what your meter is picking up, I would wager, is actually ELF being picked up as RF. That can happen because laptops can be big sources of ELF, which are the extremely low frequency forms of EMF that are generated by anything running on power. And laptops can be very big sources of ELF, especially if they're plugged in and charging while you're using them. So, and that stuff gets a little harder to shield against. The shielding I was talking to you about was just for the RF. But there's usually, when it comes down to it, there's for scenarios like you were just asking about, there are very few just clean and easy answers. Like in the way, like a phone pouch is a clean and easy answer to carrying your phone more safely. That equivalently easy answer does not exist for instance, optimizing workspaces. And that's when it really pays off to start working one-on-one with an expert, like a certified building biologist who has the electromagnetic radiation specialization on their degree. And so, and I know that there's some near you. We offer online consulting with BBIs through our website at shieldyourbody.com. And those are the kinds of people who can work with you, because with a lot of these things, you have to try something and then test to see what the result is, and then try something different and test and see what the result is. And it's only these experts who really know what to try and then what specifically to measure and then how to respond to the results that you're seeing.
Yeah, it's not just from our tech though. It's dirty electricity in the home. It's like how the home was wired.
Mhm.
And our electrician, he's a friend of ours, and I just asked him, I'm like, so we got some pretty high EMF fields in the home here with laptops off, even with the router off. And it's to do with actually the electrical of the home. And Dave Asprey was saying he's building his home as his new home as like a Faraday cage, but not everybody can do that. So I like the shielding technique. I like the shrouding technique to like wear items, sleep in items, this plexiglass thing. We'll see if I end up doing that because that sounds a little extreme. You can actually get these like silver mesh goggles and gloves. And
Mhm.
so I think that some people, they actually have to do that because you're so sensitive. So I kind of do what I can. I do go that extra mile. And I know a number of you listening here are doing some of them, but maybe you learned something new. But definitely, please, 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 please protect the children when they're on tablets and things like that. Please make sure the Bluetooth's off, airplane mode's off. Don't have those apps on them. Give your kids books and crayons or like non-toxic things. So just start to make simple strategies in your home. So thank you so much, R Blank, for being on the show. We went a little over for time. Do you have any closing words for us today?
No, well, yes, because I was obviously, if I'm saying no, then those are words. But no, my message is that there is a lot that you can do. Don't start with the hardest things. Don't start by going out and buying stuff. Start by learning, what behaviors of yours are likely to be causing exposures and you are most comfortable altering. So maybe you hear me about carrying your phone in your pocket, but you're not willing to take that action for whatever reason. But maybe you are willing to turn off your Wi-Fi at night. Well, then do that. Start making these changes, and you will be reducing your health risk from these exposures. Even as the amount of EMF in our environment just keeps growing and growing and growing, we still have a lot of control over our worst exposures. And so it's by taking these steps. And I have a guide, a free guide for download at the top of my website. So if you go to shieldyourbody.com, it's right there at the top. It says get the guide, get it. You'll see what some of the top techniques are to reducing your exposure, why I think they are amongst the most important ones, and just start there. And, as you go, do what's comfortable for you. You don't have to overhaul your life. You don't have to change your life. You don't have to get rid of all your tech. Just take the steps that you are comfortable taking, and every little bit actually counts.
Wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining R Blank and I from Shield Your Body. Be sure to use promo code when you're shopping for some shielding and adapter pieces and, some things to help you live with your tech, but not become your tech or become sick from your tech. Because I want you to have the best hair, skin, nails of your life. And if you're radiating yourself day in and day out, that is just not going to happen. You could buy all the skincare products and spend all the money on rejuvenation, but you won't have the best hair, skin, nails of your life because you're not setting the stage for healthy cellular functioning. So everyone, be sure to check out R Blank's podcast as well. We had a great conversation. I'm going to be sharing that on my newsletter this week, and you can find all things with me in the show notes of this episode as well as for R Blank. Thank you so much for everybody tuning into the show here on the Rachel Varga podcast. Stay high vibe, stay radiant, and be beautiful.